Welcome to the Midnight Files channel. On the morning of December 1st, 1948, a man's body was discovered on Somerton Beach in Adelaide, Australia. He was well dressed, lying against a seawall, with his head resting on the concrete, legs crossed and one arm extended. He appeared to have simply fallen asleep, but he was dead. The discovery would launch one of the most perplexing unsolved mysteries in Australian history, a case so strange that it continues to baffle investigators more than 70 years later. The man has never been definitively identified. The cause of his death remains uncertain, and the circumstances surrounding his presence on that beach are shrouded in mystery. The body was found around 7 in the morning by local residents who were walking along the beach. Police arrived and began their investigation, initially assuming this would be a straightforward case of natural death, or perhaps suicide. However, it quickly became apparent that nothing about this case would be straightforward. The man appeared to be in his 40s, in good physical condition, with no identification documents of any kind. All labels had been removed from his clothing, something that seemed deliberately done to prevent identification. The autopsy revealed several unusual findings. The man's internal organs showed signs consistent with poisoning, particularly his spleen, which was enlarged to about 3 times its normal size. His stomach was congested, and there was blood in his stomach contents. However, toxicology tests failed to identify any known poison. The pathologist conducting the autopsy noted the unusual condition of the organs and concluded that death was likely due to poisoning by an unknown substance, possibly a rare poison or one that rapidly degraded and couldn't be detected by the chemical tests available in 1948. Adding to the mystery was the discovery that the man's calf muscles were unusually developed, suggesting he might have been a ballet dancer, runner, or someone who spent considerable time on tiptoes. His hands were found to be in excellent condition with no calluses, suggesting he hadn't done manual labor. His teeth showed evidence of professional dental care. All of these details suggested someone of at least middle-class background, yet no one reported him missing and no identification could be found. Police investigation revealed several curious items. In the man's pockets were an unused second-class rail ticket from Adelaide to Henley Beach, an American-made aluminum comb of a type not commonly sold in Australia, a half-empty packet of chewing gum, and some matches. There was also a scrap of paper with 2 phone numbers that led nowhere useful. What wasn't found was equally significant. No wallet, no money, no identification, and no key. The case took a bizarre turn several months later when investigators discovered a small pocket sewn into the waistband of the man's trousers, hidden behind a regular pocket. Inside was a tiny piece of paper with 2 words printed on it in Persian, Tamam Shud, which translates roughly to ended or finished. This phrase appeared to have been torn from a book, with the word Shud on one line and Tamam on the line above. Police recognized the phrase as coming from the final page of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, a collection of Persian poetry, translated by Edward Fitzgerald. This discovery led to a public appeal, asking if anyone had a copy of the Rubaiyat, with the final page torn out. Remarkably, someone came forward. A man reported finding a copy of the book in the back seat of his unlocked car, which had been parked near Somerton Beach around the time of the unknown man's death. The final page had indeed been torn out, and it matched the piece found in the dead man's pocket. The book itself contained several cryptic additions. On the back cover was what appeared to be a code, 5 lines of seemingly random letters. Below this were a phone number and what might have been directions or clues. The code has never been definitively solved, though countless amateur and professional cryptographers have attempted to crack it. Some researchers believe it might be an abbreviated message using the first letters of words in a sentence or poem. Others think it could be a more complex cipher. Still others wonder if it's simply random, letters that mean nothing at all. The phone number in the book led police to a woman who lived near the beach. She admitted she had given a copy of the Rubaiyat to a man she knew during World War II, but claimed to have no knowledge of the dead man. She stated she never saw him before and couldn't explain how her phone number ended up in a book found near his body. However, witnesses reported seeing a man matching the unknown person's description in the area where she lived shortly before his death. The woman, whose identity was protected for many years and who became known simply as Justin in early reports, maintained she knew nothing about the case. Theories about the unknown man's identity and the circumstances of his death have proliferated over the decades. One persistent theory suggests he was a spy, possibly involved in Cold War espionage. The year 1948 was the beginning of the Cold War, and the unusual circumstances, the removed labels, the code, the possible poisoning fit a pattern that might suggest intelligence work. However, no evidence has ever emerged to definitively support this theory, and it remains speculation. Another theory proposes that the man was involved in smuggling or other illegal activities and was murdered by associates. The deliberate removal of identifying information and the possible use of an untraceable poison could support this interpretation. However, again, no concrete evidence links the unknown man to any criminal enterprise. Some researchers have focused on the romantic angle, suggesting the man might have been involved in a love affair gone wrong, possibly with the woman whose phone number appeared in the book. This theory would explain his presence near her home and might suggest suicide rather than murder. However, the woman denied knowing him, and without definitive proof, this remains another unverified theory. The question of whether the man was murdered or took his own life has never been resolved. The poisoning appears deliberate, but whether it was self-administered or forced upon him cannot be determined. The relaxed position of the body suggested he might have simply lain down and lost consciousness, which could fit either scenario. Over the years, numerous attempts have been made to identify the unknown man. His facial features were distinctive enough that a plaster cast was made of his face. Photographs were widely circulated, and his fingerprints were shared with authorities around the world. Despite this, no match was ever found. It seemed impossible that a man could simply not exist anywhere in the records of the world, yet that appeared to be the case. In 2009, the case received renewed attention when researchers obtained permission to examine the body, which had been buried in Adelaide in 1949. They hoped that modern DNA analysis might provide answers. Hair samples were collected, and DNA was extracted. While this DNA was analyzed, it didn't immediately lead to identification because there was no match in existing databases. In 2022, a researcher named Derek Abbott, who had studied the case for years, announced that using DNA genealogy techniques similar to those that caught the Golden State Killer, he had identified the Somerton man as Charles Webb, an electrical engineer from Melbourne. Abbott's identification was based on DNA analysis combined with genealogical research. However, this identification has been disputed by other researchers and has not been universally accepted by authorities or the wider community of people studying the case. Questions remain about the certainty of the identification, and as of the current date, debate continues about whether this identification is accurate. The cause of death remains officially undetermined. While poisoning seems likely, the specific substance was never identified, and whether it was administered by the man himself or by someone else remains unknown. The code in the book remains unsolved. No one knows definitively why all his clothing labels were removed or what his purpose was in Adelaide. The Tamam Shud case demonstrates how a mystery can persist even in the modern era, when we assume everything can be solved with enough technology and effort. The case has inspired books, documentaries, theories, and endless speculation. It represents the rare situation where almost every question leads to more questions rather than answers. The phrase Tamam Shud or finished seems grimly appropriate for a case that appears to have ended before it could truly begin. A man died on a beach, and despite decades of investigation, the most basic questions about who he was and what happened to him remain either unanswered or uncertain. The unknown man of Somerton Beach took his secrets to the grave, and whether those secrets will ever be fully uncovered remains an open question. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.